Buenas noches. Buenas tardes y buenas noches a todos los que nos acompañan la noche de hoy o la tarde de hoy, depende de dónde estemos. Estamos súper orgullosos de la tercera entrega o la tercera Cybersecurity Conference que hacemos. Como se acordarán muchos de ustedes, la comenzamos para la pandemia y hicimos una serie de, de conferencias en el año 2020 y esta es la tercera vez que lo hacemos y estamos súper contentos y súper orgullosos. Creemos tener una excelente grupo de expositores. Estamos súper honrados y contentos de que nos acompañen algunas personas muy importantes para nosotros y para la industria. Esta vez son 7 ciberconferencias en los martes y los jueves, como siempre. Así es que el día de hoy hablaremos de un tema de mucho interés y es un gran honor y placer para nosotros poder contar con Jake Braun. So, I will change to English because we have the honor to have Jake Braun with us. And I will read his bio. Uh, Jake, to begin with, thank you very much for your time. It's a honor, a pleasure to have you with us. So, Jake serves as the acting principal deputy national cyber director in the White House. Previously, he served as senior counselor for to the security of home to the Secretary of Homeland Security. He was initially appointed by President Biden as senior advisor to the Department of Homeland Security Management Directorate in February 21. He also is a lecturer and former executive director of the Cyber Policy Initiative at the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy. He works at the Center of Politics, Technology, and National Security. He is the author of the book Democracy in Danger: How Hackers and Activists Exposed Fatal Flaws in the Election System, and has co-authored 3 award-winning and seminal works on election infrastructure cyber vulnerabilities. Mr. Braun was Chief Executive Officer of Cambridge Global Advisors from 2013 to 2021. He assisted clients in the management, development, and implementation of their national security programs, practices, and policies with focus on cybersecurity. Prior to joining the University of Chicago Harris School of Public Policy faculty and Cambridge Global Advisors, Mr. Braun was appointed by President Obama as Director of White House and Public Liaison to the Department of Homeland Security, where he oversaw some of the most high-profile public engagements executed at DHS. He was instrumental in the effort to gain passage into the European Parliament of the largest data sharing agreement between the United States and the European Union. In addition, he designed and implemented a program to modernize the DHS cybersecurity workforce. Mr. Braun also oversaw the stakeholder crisis communications for the White House during the 2010 Deepwater Horizon Gulf oil spill. Prior to his tenure as White House liaison, Mr. Braun served on the presidential transition team for the Obama administration as Deputy Director for National Security Agency's Review. In this capacity, he oversaw the agency review programs for all national security agencies, including State Department, Department of Defense, DHS, CIA, USAID, etc., and guided policy assessment from the inception to the then President-elect's desk. Mr. Braun, also co-founder of DEF CON Voting Machine Hacking Village, and in the President's Circle on the Chicago Council of Global Affairs. Mr. Braun began his career as journalist for newspapers in Illinois and Taiwan. He holds an MA in International Relations from Troy University, and an MA in Education from National Louis University in Chicago, and a BA in Philosophy from Loyola University in Chicago. Wow, that's impressive, Jake. Thank you very much again for your time. And now, tell us a little about what is ONCD, and what's the purpose, and what does that directory main objectives?
Well, first of all, hola, Mauricio, gracias for having me. And also, thanks for indulging me and asking the questions in English. My Spanish is not great. And I know I've been having my kids learn Spanish since they were about 3 months old. But when we travel in Latin America, they refuse to speak it. They just make me speak Spanish and then make fun of me for when I invariably make a whole host of mistakes when I'm trying to speak when we're traveling in the region. So I appreciate you for indulging me there. Um, so ONCD is the Office of the National Cyber Director. It was created by Congress. There was a special commission set up called the Solarium Commission, set up in late 19 and 2019 and finished their work in 2020. The commission suggested multiple things for the federal government, one of which was to set up a new office in the White House that would help to coordinate cyber policy across the administration. And so that was from kind of all aspects of cyber. So whether it be economic, uh, um, you know, kind of ones and zeros security of federal systems, um, also working with our intelligence community, our military, our domestic cyber defenders like Homeland Security and CISA, and others. And also, one of the things we were first tasked with was writing a national cyber strategy for the Biden administration. So that strategy, which was released last March in 2023, was the third such strategy to be written, cyber strategy to be written in American history. The first one was done in the Bush administration, George W. Bush, at the very end of the Bush administration. Then there was another one written during Obama, and President Biden knew that there was no time to delay in updating the cyber strategy for the United States. And so one of the first things he tasked this newly created office in the White House with was writing a strategy for the US federal government and also the nation for how we're going to approach cybersecurity.
Wow, that's something many countries we should copy that definitely. So the theme for this year's cyber security conference is be ready. Readiness is very important, and one of the things we have been seeing, and most of our listeners will agree on, is that financially motivated gangs are causing havoc with ransomware. They're exploiting vulnerabilities and exploiting the human frailness of being the weakest link many times, and extorting the people out of their money or stealing their money outright. But one of the things that worries me, in addition to that, which is very big, and we all know that this is something that worries everybody, that their companies or their institutions will stop working because of a ransom that is not paid, and they lose their capacity to operate without infrastructure. Is that in some places, or not some places, many military institutions and governments are using cyber as a weapon. We all know that. And one of the things that we have seen in attacks like Petya or WannaCry is that some nation weaponizes uh, vulnerabilities, unknown vulnerabilities, and launches an attack to an adversary nation, which are both far, far away from our lands. But unfortunately, in the internet, we are mostly in the battleground. In the physical war, the battleground is confined physically. In the internet, we all live in that battleground, and the problem is that many times we are not ready for that because, of course, they are unknown attacks, very sophisticated attacks that are designed to make damage to their adversary, but the same damage goes around the world. So, without going into depth in the hows and the whys of these attacks, one of the things that we all must be doing is preparing our resilience. Maybe you could help us talking about what the resilience means for the plans you're doing with the cyber strategies you're doing, and how in our countries in Latin America we should be facing these risks and make our companies, our institutions, and our countries resilient to these and other attacks.
Sure. Uh, so, I came over to this office right around the time that the strategy was being finished, and my main task as the principal deputy, so the number two in the office, was or is to implement the strategy that I was just talking about. And that strategy has two main components of it. One is to shift the burden of cybersecurity from individuals to the big tech companies that, frankly, benefit financially the most from all the technology that we use. And then also to incentivize resilience. So let me kind of go into both those a little bit. So in terms of incentivizing or so shifting the burden, my mother or father are wonderful people. Same with my children, but their security can't be determined or should not be determined in our estimation by whether or not they make a mistake one day and click on a link on their phone that they're not supposed to, or whether they forgot to turn on two-factor authentication or don't even know what two-factor authentication is. Um, and so we, in our strategy, call for really placing that burden for security, not on the individual, but on these tech companies. And we're working with both voluntary and um, uh, other requirements to help uh, push tech companies to take that responsibility on themselves. So that's thing one. Thing two is we're trying to incentivize resilience in our infrastructure. So some of this is pretty specific to domestic American issues, but some of it actually expands around the world, and in particular in certain parts of Latin America. So the president has an overarching agenda called the Investing in America program. It's made up of three landmark pieces of legislation. One is the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is kind of about bricks and mortar, building airports and bridges and things like that. One is called the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really about the transition to a clean energy future. So, you know, building up our solar panels across the country, putting in more windmill farms and so on, and connecting those to the grid. And then third is the Chips and Science Act, where we're investing heavily in trying to make uh, um, chips and other kind of high-end technologies here in the United States or in allied countries, particularly those near us. And all three of those programs together are about $1.8 trillion of investment. And that goes to, a whole host of companies, state and local governments, and so on. Many of those entities will wind up uh, building products that are sold in Latin America. And also many of the subcontractors and so on will be in Latin America to service the companies building these products. And while cyber is not called out very frequently in any of the bills, it is an implicit part of each one of these bills because we are incentivizing um, entities that are applying for the funding to bake cyber into their development plans for new technology, for new infrastructure, whatever. And through these investments, where we, require or incentivize those receiving the funds to bake cyber into their programs, we are seeking to incentivize industry and others to take cyber seriously and to ensure that cyber security is built into these technologies of the future and so on. And while, like I said a second ago, cyber is not explicitly called out frequently in these bills, it is a small piece of all of them, and a small piece of $1.8 trillion is a heck of a lot of money. And we believe it's the largest investment in cybersecurity in American history.
Fantastic. I like the part when you say shifting the responsibility of the protection to the big tech companies, including communications and whatever. And it brings to my mind that years ago in our countries, it was very usual to have filters, water filters in each home. So everyone had to have their filter or boil the water because the water was not clean enough to drink. And it makes a lot of sense to make the water drinkable in the plant instead of doing it in every house. And
Right.
yes, definitely the technology is way faster than our ability to defend, especially now with the new attacks using artificial intelligence and deepfakes and all these things that are coming our way. And not you don't have to go to elderly people to fool them easily with the new attacks. Everybody can be as easily fooled. So definitely we have to shift because we have been working really hard, everybody, to defend their own fort, which is good. But if we put defenses around the whole infrastructure, it's going to be much more secure for everybody, and the productivity, because we're investing a lot of money in security, where we could be investing in productivity and other things really uh, to make a better world. So does OECD or other government entities have government to government like technology transfer or knowledge transfer or some programs to help friendly governments make the security leap and get their infrastructures and countries secure?
We do. We have several programs like this. In fact, one of our roles as the Office of the National Cyber Director is to help inform government spending on research and development related to cybersecurity, and in fact, all cybersecurity spending across the federal government. And so, as part of that, there are multiple government to government relationship programs on this. One I know is at the know of is the Department of Homeland Security, their Office of the uh, of Science and Technology they have a cyber division that has multiple partnerships across the globe with different countries that are allied countries, of course, as you state, to do cyber R&D together. The host country or the partner nation has to put some skin in the game, so they have to invest their own time and money as well alongside the U.S. dollars. But we do have partner relationships like that. Also, the State Department has a cyber division that has been set up to really help us think through how best to partner with uh, friendly nations across the world in terms of kind of knowledge transfer, best practices. I think, as you know, Mauricio, because we worked on this together, I think in a Latin American country years ago, the U.S. federal government will fund um, programs where cybersecurity subject matter experts will go to nations that request the help or request partners to kind of talk through best practices and some of their cyber concerns and develop strategies on how to mitigate those threats and other issues. And so, between the State Department programs that were started a few years ago, but are kind of getting more attention and more resources to better enhance our cyber relationships across the globe with our allies, as well as other R&D programs like the one at Homeland Security's Office of Science and Technology that I mentioned. There's many of these, and we see them as critically important to our success as countries who have a view of the internet that we share, which is one that is free, open, and secure, as opposed to some of our adversaries' view of the internet, which is one that is closed, not secure, and decidedly not free.
Right. Exactly. Oh, and does the ONCD or areas of the government that you know of have some similar programs with private companies or private tech companies?
How so? Sorry.
Uh, for example, similar things as you were explaining about the labs and the R&D. Do you work with private companies in these R&D labs and these
Oh, yes.
development of let's say the new security?
Oh, yes, of course. So we have billions that are spent every year on R&D related to cybersecurity. Almost all of that is done in partnership with the private sector. Even when we're doing uh, R&D with a government entity, like let's say the S&T Division of Homeland Security or DARPA, which is one of the military's main research entities, or the Department of Energy that manages the national labs. Um, Generally speaking, there's always some private sector partner involved, if not wholly responsible um, for the R&D that we're doing in cyber, and that could be anything from quantum to AI to zero trust or any number of other types of R&D. We've actually been working closely, our office has, with the National Science Foundation because they've gotten received through the Invest in America program uh, significant resources for cyber training and other types of research and so on.
Cyber training, fantastic. That brings me to my next question. Um, there's lots of studies that say that there's millions of uh, open jobs in cybersecurity, and that we cannot train them fast enough to be able to have a strong cybersecurity in the different institutions. What is being done by your office and by the government to help that?
Well, let's see. I'm glad you raised it because that's actually one of the number one things that I focus on every day. Because none of the key aspects or initiatives in our strategy are implementable, if my job is implementation of the strategy, without people to do the implementing. And with, I think, 3.5 million vacant cyber positions across the globe and about 600,000, depending on which study you agree with, vacancies in the United States, we have a real concern of not being able to do any of these cyber best practices that we talk about or implement any of these new strategies without a workforce to do it. And so we're taking, what is in some way making the old new again, and in some way we think being pretty innovative. So, for example, we're making the old new again in the sense that when we first started doing cybersecurity years ago, nobody had a degree in cyber. Everybody just kind of learned it as they went. They were IT professionals or other sort of folks who kind of worked in the tech space that got brought into cyber, or maybe they were as we called them years ago, tinkerers, who later became hackers, who learned how to do cybersecurity and use their hacking capabilities for good. And so what we kind of morphed into over the years was a scenario where everybody assumed that you had to at least have a 4-year college degree, if not, a master's in computer science to do cybersecurity. And what we found is that, in fact, that's not true. And for a lot of the kind of basic cybersecurity that needs to be done in an enterprise, managing firewalls, making sure there's secure configurations, things like that, or managing any suite of tools. You don't necessarily have to have a 4-year degree or a computer science, PhD to do that. You could get trained. You could get on the job training. You could take maybe a couple online courses or go to a community college, which in the United States is a 2-year institution, and learn how to do some basic skills in cyber that would enable you to get into the workforce and help fill these shortages far sooner than otherwise we could, which is clearly necessary here because we're not churning out enough people with 4-year degrees in cybersecurity to fill all these vacancies. And so to that end, we've been working with folks in the federal government to remove the 4-year degree requirement for federal contractors, those doing business with the U.S. government, largely so that we can use, as we say, the power of the purse to try and move industry, since we believe, the largest purchaser of cybersecurity services in the United States, we, the federal government, that if we remove a 4-year degree requirement, other corporations and consumers of cybersecurity services will also remove 4-year degree requirements, and that will hopefully open up a whole new avenue of or pipeline of individuals to get into cyber and start filling these vacancies by getting hands-on training and so on. So that's kind of, like I said, making the old new again, bringing in people who, learn how to do this. In terms of trying to be more innovative, we have a whole host of things that we're doing. One of which is we're talking to different organizations that are exploring aptitude or how to measure or assess aptitude of people who are not in cyber at all. There's some companies out there, I don't think I'm allowed to say their names, but some Fortune 500 companies who now are letting everybody in the company take an aptitude test, even people who aren't in technology at all. Somebody who is, doing maybe manual labor or driving a truck or stocking shelves at a grocery store or whatever, letting these folks take aptitude tests to see if they find somebody who maybe is a gamer or whatever that happens to have some aptitude to be a quick study of cyber. And so we've been talking to folks who are you know working on expanding these aptitude assessments to see if there's a way that we could work with partner entities and public-private partnerships and so on to scale aptitude assessments with the private sector to identify people who have nothing to do with cybersecurity or even technology today that may be folks that we should be recruiting into the field to fill these vacancies. So those are a handful of things, but I probably spend half my day thinking about workforce, and we have a whole team of 20 people who just does workforce strategy, cyber workforce strategy in the White House.
Oh, that's very needed. How do you see the role of AI in helping reduce that big gap between the the labor that we need and things that can be done automatically or through AI?
Sure. I don't know if you all are aware of the executive order that we put out a few months ago on AI. It's very long, but it is pretty comprehensive and does talk a lot about how we address workforce shortages and so on related to AI. And there's some key security things that we're interested in that space. One is helping secure AI and helping AI companies do their own security at the highest possible levels. But also, as you can imagine, the private sector and government are trying to figure out, how can we automate some of the more basic or kind of rote skills or jobs or tasks, I guess is a better way to say it than jobs, tasks in cybersecurity. So we don't need, humans doing some of the basic simple stuff like, uh, different network scanning techniques and things like that, and learning from scanning to be able to remove some things that humans have to do now. I do think that this both presents an opportunity and a challenge, at least as we're looking at it. So it's an opportunity in the sense that, if we could remove whole classes of tasks that today have to be done by humans and could otherwise be done with AI, then that's great because we don't have enough humans to do the job or to do the jobs that are out there now. That being said, what we are seeing that's a little disconcerting is that a lot of these rudimentary tasks are being done or can now be done by machines and AI and so on. And so it's a lot harder for entry level people to get work in cyber, which seems so ironic because we have this huge shortage, but yet people with no experience have trouble finding jobs in cyber often. And we're a little bit concerned that if we wind up in a scenario where everybody's looking for somebody with 3 to 5 years experience, but nobody can get their first year of experience, it's going to actually complicate our ability to find workers in the future and to train those train those early in their kind of development to get them up to a point where they are further up the value chain in terms of the type of work they're doing. And so, as with most technology, there's potential benefits and potential risks. And so we're excited about the benefits of automating a bunch of these tasks, but also increasingly mindful of the risks of what does that mean when our cyber workforce doesn't look like a pyramid anymore, where you have most of the people at the bottom kind of working their way up to a few elite cyber jobs at the top, but it's more like a diamond where you have a few people at the bottom at entry level positions, but most of the jobs actually in the middle, like a diamond, where that you have, your mid-career people making up the bulk of the workforce. That's going to make it pretty hard to get people in that mid-career position. So we're already kind of starting to think about how do we deal with those issues now.
Those are big challenges, and yeah, definitely. One last question: do you foresee that there might be some larger uh, cooperation between countries to stop at least the financially motivated attacks between borders, because most of the attacks are from the other side of some border, right? And the law sometimes is slow to go through the borders. Is there some hope in that area that you can see?
Yeah, I think there's two things. So if you look at the strategy we put out, there's 5 pillars to it. And pillar 2, so I guess by definition, about 20% of the strategy is all about disrupting transnational criminal organizations that are operating in cyber and doing cyber enabled crime. As you can imagine, a huge portion of what we're looking at there is related to ransomware and these financially motivated crimes that you're talking about. And in that line of effort, there's a lot of work that the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and others do. But there's also a whole host of lines of effort in the disruption of transnational criminal organizations in cyber that the State Department's the lead on, because we know that many of these actors, in fact, most of them, are operating outside of our borders, and so we can't just go pick them up and throw them in jail because they're in someone else's country. And so if we're not working with our international partners to find these folks and get them arrested and then indicted and hopefully convicted and so on, we're not going to be able to get after the problem. So that division of the State Department I was talking about a minute ago is working closely with folks like Interpol and others and other partner countries to figure out how we can start to get after those folks who are in countries where we do have allies who have law enforcement that will work with us to go after them. That's kind of one key piece of what we're doing, and then separately, we're really trying to take a forward-leaning approach on engaging with a bunch of the international bodies that are out there, like the UN, like AUKUS, like ASEAN, like Organization of American States, et cetera, who are seeking to put more policies and programs in place to go after these cyber criminals. I think that we realize that without working in these international bodies, we're never going to be able to really get after the problem. And so we're doing a lot more engagement in these multilateral institutions on this topic as well.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Jake. I think we're just about finishing the time that you allotted us. So I don't have any, well, I have a million questions, but we don't have the time. Thank you very, very much for your time. And I hope that we can have a future conversation. And I appreciate very much to you and your team that you were able to be with us tonight. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great that you guys put this on and that you've been doing it for the last few years. We need conversations like this, particularly among allies and so on. To talk about what we're all doing, and I'd love to hear, Mauricio, if there's good ideas to come out of the conference, please send them my way, because we're always looking for good ideas here as well. So thanks for doing this, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Jake. Goodbye.